Howdy folks, and welcome to snowy Colorado. And this is a 2023 Mazda CX-5 Signature. It's all-wheel drive, it's turbocharged, and it's one of the best snow cars not many of you are buying, but you probably should. The most important part of this car I wanted to jump on right away, and that is its iActive system. It's known as Predictive All-Wheel Drive, and it may sound like a gimmick, but I've had many opportunities to drive these vehicles in the snow. And if they have this predictive system, it proves to be one of the better all-wheel drive systems. Now, before that, a quick disclaimer. Any car in this type of environment should have snow tires. That makes it a better snow car. But if you have all-season tires like this vehicle does, then having a good all-wheel drive system really truly helps. Essentially, this is an all-wheel drive car. It is a front-wheel drive car when need be for efficiency, and then it sends power to the rear wheels when it detects slip. That's basic all-wheel drive system. But would you believe, come here, these play a role in its all-wheel drive system? I kid you not. And the amount of input you're putting into the steering, and of course, the temperature outside. All of that tells this system, fire up the rear, because I am going to need maximum traction. It's a brilliant system, and just as importantly, it's absolutely seamless. It just works. One of the best parts of this vehicle is the fact that it has a turbocharged engine. And I know some of you guys are probably a little confused, like, doesn't Mazda have a dozen other vehicles with a CX and blah, blah, blah? And yes, we'll talk about that too in a bit. CX-5 sort of sits in its own little world. And the reason why is because this vehicle single-handedly saved Mazda. I know some of you guys are going to be like, well, no, the Miata was really, no. In terms of sales, when this came out, and this thing's been out for about 10 years, the CX-5 has been instrumental in saving Mazda in the United States. A big seller for them, even though the numbers don't make a dent with the competition. Which is a shame, because I truly believe that this is one of the most enjoyable crossovers you can drive, especially if you get it with this. This is a 227 horsepower, 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine that puts out 310 pound-feet of torque. It's hooked up to a 6-speed automatic transmission. At least it's not a CVT. It is extremely well balanced, very set up for performance. One of the best handling vehicles in its class. It gets 24 miles per gallon combined, and it does like the premium gas. Sorry, it's turbo. So it's not the most efficient, and that might be one of the things that would probably mark it off some people's lists. I would agree with that part, but it's so much damn fun to drive. You kind of, take that other part away, move it. Now, some of you guys are like, okay, well, what about this new CX-50 and the CX-90 and the CX-30 and the CX-88 and the CX-57 and blah, 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 blah. All these CXs are coming out with. This is a CX-5. Why is it still being built? That's a very good question. Mazda has not indicated or shown any interest in discontinuing this vehicle yet. And the irony is that there's almost nothing new for 2023. I mean, essentially, all of the big upgrades with this vehicle happened in 2022. Some headlights, taillights, instrumentation, stuff like that. Nothing really big. So, what you're talking about here is just the same car as it was last year, and it's still selling fairly well for Mazda. And they see no reason, at least right now, to discontinue it, despite the fact that they're bringing out all of these new vehicles. This interior is, in my mind, still on the top. Mazda has done an excellent job with interior design. There are a few issues that I'm going to point out. First of all, this is recently redone. It's 10.25-inch screen, which is great, but doesn't really like to be pressed. So you have to use the knob in order to make things happen. And they finally have included, this I think a couple of years they've been doing this finally, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but not wireless. Speaking of wireless phone charging doesn't work very well, especially if I have a phone in case. Now I know my big battered phone, which by the way can be used as a weapon because of this metal case, it just doesn't work with this. But I noticed that other phones that are here, the way it's set up, I mean, if you accelerate or decelerate, it just moves off this little thing and you're no longer charging. So it's not the best location for a charger. Another issue I have is the fact that the glove compartment, I'm gonna just pop this, try not to take off Case's knees, that is a tiny glove compartment. It's very small. In fact, throughout the vehicle, the cubbies in here are actually pretty small. And that also goes for the cargo in the back. The Mazda CX-5 has, amongst many of its competitors, the least amount of cargo space. And it's essentially the smallest. Now, that doesn't mean it's the worst. I've been telling you how wonderful this car is. Part of the reason it's so wonderful is because there isn't a lot to it. It's not a lot of bulk. It's not that heavy. It does compete with the Honda CR-V, of course, and of course the Toyota RAV4, the Ford Escape. I mean, those are the best selling ones, right? I believe this car, and this is why it sort of sits in this weird ether, also competes against brands like Acura, BMW, even Audi. Because of the interior quality, very comfortable, heated steering wheel, heated seats, which are also ventilated up front. But keep in mind, this is the very top of the line version of this. This is the signature all-wheel drive. It's got all the bells and whistles. There are lesser versions, I should say, entry-level versions of the CX-5 that are much cheaper or much less expensive that don't have all of these amenities. Today I wanted to first show you really what this car can do. And it's like 4 or 5 inches, but it's also 19 degrees outside. Now I've driven one of these, an exact model just like this, in say about almost 2 feet of snow. It's like 18 inches of snow. That's when things get challenging, and it did really, really well. I'm gonna turn the steering wheel and I'm gonna accelerate. Power's already going to the rear wheels. I'm actually putting down the foot quite a bit. Just does exactly what it's supposed to do. It keeps you out of trouble by adding the power where it's needed. Now, by the way, this is a simple system. It's not all mechanical. It's partially driven by the brakes. So in other words, if a wheel is slipping, what it'll do is it'll clamp down on that and provide power to the wheels that have the grip, and it works seamlessly. As I've said before, one of the better systems out there. It's really underrated. iActive system, fantastic. Let me try that again. So accelerating, now I'm gonna turn. No big deal. Barely any loss whatsoever. Do it again. I'm going a little bit faster. I'm turning. I can actually feel the power being switched along the rear axle as we were going through that, because it was actually finding grip. You can feel that in the seat of your pants. Just does what it's supposed to do. Now it's pushing a little bit and it's figuring it out. It's retarded a little bit of that speed and actually brought everything back down. If you're somebody who's not used to driving in snow, this is a very good system. Now, the other side of it is, if you're an idiot like me, and you decide to, I don't know, let's see, slow down and disable a couple things, and then hit it, what'll happen is when you turn, the vehicle is still like, I'm not too sure I'm gonna let you do it. Completely kills the power. Some of you guys might say, well, that kills the joy, that kills the fun. It's not built for that. It's actually built to be driven safely. And that's the bottom line. And that's one of the things that makes this car pretty damn remarkable, is the fact that it saves you from yourself. My spouse and I have owned 5 Mazdas in our lifetime. The reason why is because they're economical, they're fun to drive, they're solid little cars. I go back to the fact that they're fun to drive. I love a rewarding vehicle. I can't stand something boring. Very rewarding. As you see this vehicle here, signature with the big turbo, the leather, and all the goodies and gizmos, it comes out to basically $41,000. It's just a hair under that for the MSRP. Now that might sound like a lot of money for a Mazda that doesn't have 3 rows, or a Mazda that's not a full-on sports car, but keep in mind that if you got a CR-V or even a RAV4 with certain trims, they would compete at this price level. And this goes to where, let's say, the Acuras start, where some of the Lexus, the smaller ones, start. They're all about that ether. That's why this thing sort of sits in a weird spot in between the two. But for what the price is, you're getting a car that has one of the best all-wheel drive systems out there for this type of environment. Off-road, not really. It doesn't really have much ground clearance. It has just enough for snow-covered areas like this. All in all, it is one of the better all-wheel drive crossovers in its class that you guys simply aren't buying very much of, which is a real shame. For the Fastline Car, TFL Now, TFL Truck, TFL Bike, TFL UFO, this is Nathan. I will see you next time.